What's the creepiest thing you've seen but no one believes you? Part 5. Not sure if this counts because I have at least 2 people that do believe me. After coming home from work one day, I was walking through my kitchen toward the living room when a frying pan just flew across the room and hit me square between the shoulders. My roommate and a friend of his both saw it happen and lost their shit. Wasn't the only time we saw weird shit in that house. I saw a shadow person in the same spot almost every day. Heard extremely heavy footsteps stomping across our roof with no explanation. My roommate says he saw a full laundry basket just flip itself upside down while it was flat on the ground. He also claims to have seen an ugly little green goblin-looking demon in our living room one night. So yeah, that's all I got. A few years ago, I went camping with my dad, my sister, my dad's friend, and my dad's friend's dog. To get where we camped, we had to boat across and down a river to where some old woods were. This was proper camping, not a campsite or anything. When we were there, me and my sis decided to play hide and seek. I ran into the woods to find her, and about 30 seconds in, I see this medium-sized man, about 50, with long, ungroomed grey hair, just standing there. I saw him for about half a second because I was running and did a turn and only caught a glimpse. As soon as it happened, my heart raced and felt deep inside my body. I turned back to see him and he wasn't there. I knew I really saw him because he was in a yellow raincoat that stood out abruptly in the woods. I called out, "Hello?" a few times because I knew my dad could hear me. And if I got into a situation, him, his friend and his dog would run over if I screamed help. But he was just gone. I yelled at my sister to come back and she did straight away. I told everyone, but no one believed me that he was there. Well, about 3 a.m. that night, a police helicopter had flown right down above our camp at the clearing at the edge of the woods. They had a huge bright white light pointing at the camp and my dad and his friend went out to look. I don't remember what quite happened as I was tired, so I just lay there on my sleeping bag a bit worried. I remember the helicopter left like 5 minutes later. The next morning, we all packed up and left. Boated down the river to the cars, and on my dad's friend's car was a small card, like the size of a business card. It was a light purple with a flowery background. It had a poem about death on it, and said R.I.P. at the bottom. A small amount of days later, my dad's friends saw in the paper a guy had went missing right where we were camping by the river, and must have been thought to have drowned or something right where we were camping. Still, no one believes me. I saw the guy next to our camp. When I was about 14, there were 2 men that attempted a home invasion while I was home with my mum and a 2-year-old she was babysitting. About 2 in the afternoon, while my mum was sleeping on the living room couch, she heard someone trying to open the front door. She jumped up and looked out the window to see a man at the front door and an unfamiliar car in the driveway. The man noticed my mum and immediately put his face next to hers in the window. "I'm from the energy company. You called and I'm coming to check it out." As he's talking, the other guy gets out the car and we can hear him walking to the back door. My mum tells the guy she didn't call anyone. She's not letting him in. These guys were in street clothes, for your information. The other guy is now trying to force himself in the back door. The guy at the front window jumps on the ledge of the window and starts banging his arms and legs against the window in an attempt to break it. He starts yelling and calling her and I names. My mum grabs the phone and calls the police. Mind you, we're in the inner city on a busy street. People are driving by and they aren't stopping. Not that the guys are bothered by it. This is a high crime area. It's scary to feel like everyone can see and no one's going to help. As my mum is on the phone with 911, the guys continue to be loud and yell and call us names, a station wagon pulls up in our next door neighbour's driveway and sits there for a moment. The door opens and a tall white man in a suit gets out. He makes eye contact with the guy on the ledge of the window that would be the home intruder and just stops banging. The pounding at the back of the house suddenly stops. My mum at this time is just hanging up with 911, who claimed to be on the way. The men hold eye contact and the intruder remains standing on the ledge. the tall white man walks to our neighbour's house and starts to knock and ring the doorbell. After about 20 seconds of strange silence, the man jumps off the ledge and the other guy is now standing by the car. They continue to stare at that guy and silently get into the car and drive away. The man at the neighbour's house comes to our front window. He yells in asking my mum if she's okay. She says she is, and he says, "They're gone now and they won't come back. You guys can stop crying." And then he walks back to his car and drives away silently. The police arrive about an hour later, typical to come that long after since no guns were involved. My mum and I tell them everything. They then talk to the neighbours. They question our neighbours, who heard a lot of yelling but couldn't see much from the way their windows face our house, but they have no recollection of anyone coming to their house during this time. No one came in the driveway, no one knocked on the door, and no one rang the doorbell. So of course the police continued to question about this part of the story that was made up. Talk about chills. All my hair stood up when the neighbours claimed no one ever came over. I can still see that station wagon driving away. It seemed like time stopped. The guy even waved as he left, but I can't remember what he looked like at all. I have a great memory for faces, but his is just a white spot. Weird. Remains one of the scariest memories I have, and we still talk about that guy. Where did he go? He saved our lives. When I was 3, we were picking up my grandparents for a Sunday drive. I was sitting in the back seat on the passenger side. My grandfather was sitting in front of me. Suddenly, he keeled over, dead of a massive stroke. As they hustled my little sister and me out of the car and into my grandparents' store, I happened to look over my shoulder and plainly saw Grandpa walking down the street with 2 men. Both were dressed in suits, which made it all the more incongruous that Grandpa was wearing the same grey sweater and peaked hat that he'd been wearing a moment before in the car. There was nothing particularly creepy about the experience, except that I wouldn't accept that Grandpa was dead because, after all, I'd just seen him walking down the street. Naturally, this didn't go over very well, but I love my grandpa. I didn't want him to be dead, and I knew what I had seen. When our family doctor arrived to pronounce Grandpa dead, my mother asked me if I would take his word for it. We had a very good, trusting relationship with our doctor, so I said that I would. The doctor assured me that my grandfather had in fact died. But he was the only grown-up who didn't treat me like I was crazy. He listened respectfully as I told him what I had seen, and he suggested that maybe the men in suits were angels. This seemed reasonable. Problem solved. But to this day, I can still see Grandpa walking down the street with those 2 men. And no matter what my parents tried to tell me, it wasn't just a guy who looked like Grandpa, coincidentally wearing exactly the same clothes he'd been wearing in the car. It was him. For years, there was a picture of a family sitting on the table in my grandma's house. The picture would be taken down every now and then, and a new portrait goes up. It was a portrait of some extended cousins. I didn't know their names. One day, my mum and I were in a grocery store, and I spotted that family. I pointed them out to my mum, who had no clue who I was on about. They weren't cousins. She had no idea who they were. I told her they were in a picture on Grandma's table. She said, there never was a picture on that table. Later that same day, we had to go to Grandma's to drop something off. When we got there, I went to the table and the picture was gone. It was there at least a week prior. I remember that picture. When Mum went to the bathroom, I asked Grandma about the picture, and even she had no idea what I was talking about. To this day, to this very day, this mystery still bugs me. I was 8 and my brother was 10. It was sometime in the middle of the night when my brother went barging into my room saying, "Something is coming, something is coming." I went under my bed to hide and my brother went under the sheets on my bed. I lay there and, I shit you not, door opens and I see a pair of legs and feet that looked inhuman. I don't know how to describe it. It stood in front of my bed. Then from there, I don't remember what happened next. I went to sleep under my bed and my brother fell asleep on my bed. Both me and my brother remember this still. I'm 26 now and he's 28. Unsure if it was our wild imagination or what, but for both of us to remember makes me feel it may have happened.